Hello and welcome to the Under the Heat Lamp podcast. This week we're going to be talking about online detectives, online crime fighters, and true crime in general. With me today is my boy David.
Hello, hello.
My boy Danny.
Hello, hello, hello.
And my young son, George.
Hello.
Why is he the young son?
George
He is the youngest here.
He is the youngest
I'm the
here,
older
and
son. I'm actually older than Kalen.
Wait, who's the oldest?
I'm the youngest one. I'm 21. Turned 21 yesterday.
Oh, I'm 45, so I guess
Yeah.
that makes me
You
the
are my
oldest.
wife, David.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, David is a bit of the father figure for all of us. We suckle from his
Teat.
anyway, so right, let's get this.
That's a true crime if there ever was one.
That would be a crime, but some crimes are worth the punishment. So, right. So today we're going to be talking about something that I really love, which is true crime, and a little bit of like online detective-y stuff too. So there's two kind of areas here that we can start talking about. The first is like true crime, and that's the community of people who are just kind of enthusiasts about crimes that happen. So they'll be reading all the case files and all that sort of stuff, and I don't know, for some reason they just love hearing about serial killers and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
The other side, which I think we'll get to as well, is the people who actively participate in those investigations and whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. So what does everyone think? Does everyone have any initial thoughts on true crime?
I don't mind where we start really. I find I'm similar to you in that I find it quite an interesting topic. I think a lot of people do have a fascination with the idea of, crime. A lot of like detective novels and TV and media is really popular in that regard. And then also true stories are also very popular. So I can see why it is quite a big phenomenon, the idea of true crime and the fans thereof.
Yeah,
Let's chat some true crime then. So Don, carry on.
I think reading through, say, the stories of like various serial killers is actually something which is incredibly interesting. Not out of, I guess there is a morbid curiosity in a way, because it's like what led this person to this extent, and especially in regards to the more lengthy investigations, like the Zodiac Killer, for example. I mean, that's probably the biggest example of, I guess, the true crime genre, as it were, if we want to talk about it.
That kind of straddles both, right? If the idea of both.
It went on for a very long time, and to some people in online and offline, I guess, it's still ongoing. Like, that was one thing I looked at, like there was like a Reddit for R Zodiac Killer, and people
we all know the
still
Zodiac Killer was Ted Cruz.
Yeah,
I have no idea. I've only watched the movie. It was a good movie. But yeah,
Jake Gyllenhaal.
But yeah, there's still people who are looking into that to this day, which is fascinating, to be honest.
It
Yeah,
is. I think it kind of stems from, a lot of people have quite a skepticism about the justice system, and the more you read about these sort of situations, the more you find that, the legal process was incorrect. I think it really opens up a whole can of worms with what is possible, this sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm. So, with the true crime, I mean, has anyone seen Making a Murderer?
No.
No, George? No?
No.
Well,
I think
so
I was going to say, we all listened to Serial, because I was going to say, like, with the idea of the Zodiac Killer and, like, that film and that case and Serial, as well as Making a Murderer, the three big ones that kind of crop up in popular culture.
Recently, Don't Fuck with Cats as well. On
Oh,
Netflix.
yeah, I saw that.
Yeah,
I saw
of
that,
course. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good. I mean, we'll probably go on to that a bit more in a minute. But with Making a Murderer, what was really interesting about this is that you could make a strong argument that show was very biased in favor of the dude Stephen Avery's innocence, whereas a lot of people on the internet believe he was guilty. But I mean, almost everyone who watched that documentary probably came out with the idea like he didn't do it, but there's all these people completely obsessed with this case online, like doing tons of research and things like that are like, nah, mate, he definitely did it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, these documentaries, they all kind of have a bit of an angle. They all come from like one perspective. So it's not like a completely neutral representation of like a series of events.
No way. Like, the thing I found interesting about that sort of thing is, especially the one that I've been listening to the most recently is Serial. And it's this weird idea that the amateur person who is either, in Cyril's case, as a journalist, or the person on the internet looking through old case files, etc., that they somehow know more or have picked up on something that a professional detective who has worked for, tens of years has somehow missed for some reason. That's the thing that always strikes me as a strange thing. Like we talked about the first series of Serial Kalen very briefly, and it was kind of like we were both pretty convinced he did it.
Yeah.
And there's not much evidence to point otherwise. And there's maybe some evidence towards like that the trial maybe wasn't the most,
trial was a bit sketchy,
watertight thing, but it still didn't. It wasn't like, oh my god, this guy is definitely innocent. How is this terrible miscarriage of justice happened? It's like, nah, he probably did it. Maybe not enough, to say, without reasonable doubt. But it wasn't. It's really strange that this sort of that case in particular took a lot of interest, and I think it was like the spin of it, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's the narrative behind it.
It's so engaging. That podcast is incredible. I remember when I first listened to that podcast, I was like taking a really long flight that had a bunch of stops, and I could not stop listening to it. Like, I stopped in one place and I quickly logged into the airport Wi-Fi just to download the rest of the episodes, because I was like, holy shit, I need to know what happens. Yeah. And it's a completely unsatisfying end, and the case is still ongoing. But there is something that's incredibly gripping about those stories when they're told well. There's a million YouTube channels now that just go over true crime stories. There's this one I watched called That Chapter quite addictively. And he'll just talk about different like gruesome murder. And he's laughing about it and stuff. He's fairly respectful, but he does like laugh about the stuff that happens.
Yeah.
And he's very popular.
It's kind of like we said at the beginning, there's a very big divide between famous solved cases or, incidents like, the Manson family, anything like that, like Jonestown, which is kind of cut and dry. There are these things. This is the story. It's completely crazy and interesting. And then the other side where it's like the Zodiac Killer or something that is still deemed to be open, even like the case in the Serial, even though it was closed, it was still like being kept open by these people. And I find it really interesting that like I didn't find any cases where the amateur detectives had like helped really.
What about the Boston bomber?
Done anything?
The Boston bomber. Reddit.
Exactly right. It's weird that they think they can do it when professional detectives I just don't understand it. I get it because it's that thing where you believe you've got some sort of secret knowledge that you want to help people with, but it just gets in the way. Like, it just seems to get in the way.
That makes me think about in cases like these where it's not their job per se, what is the actual motivation for people to go out of their way and look into things like this to the extent that they do? Is it actually fun. Because
I think it's
but at the core of it, is it actually because they want to solve the investigation, or is it because it's something more egotistical where they want to be that person that is the one that discovers? In the case of the Zodiac Killer, for example, do they want to be that person who can decipher, those messages and figure out their identity, or is it that do they even care about bringing someone who was behind it to justice?
I think it depends on the medium a lot. Like, a lot of these cases we're talking about are documentaries, when the sole purpose of them is to be as entertaining and as thrilling as possible, so everybody talks about it. And I mean, what story sells more than there's a big mystery that the police missed, or we're undiscovering this big secret that nobody knows
about. On the run to this day.
Yeah.
Anything that involves like sex and murder is just
Yeah. I mean, so on the sort of like online detective-y side, I'm sure we'll come back to true crime as well, because I think these two really do intersect quite a bit. George, you said you had trouble finding where these people congregate.
Yeah, like a lot of the stuff that I've found was more people talking about true crime media, like what podcasts do you listen to, what true crime documentaries are you interested in. I found it hard to find like the real amateur side of people trying to figure out their own things,
So I'll say a lot of these... Sorry, George, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was just saying like things that aren't tied to like a piece of media being released.
Yeah, I mean... a lot of it is tied to pieces of media, and that will kind of like concentrate people's attention. But a lot of it isn't on like big forums and stuff. A lot of it is on like obscure Facebook groups with a few thousand people. So it'll be like, for example, someone will go missing in some town, probably in America, and a Facebook group will form called like "Looking for Brandy Hart" or whatever. And then like all these people just come on there like, her fucking boyfriend murdered her, or whatever, and they'll be like posting all this evidence like, look, we found his police record, and like he did this in like 1995, and then all this sort of shit.
Yeah,
And
it's
then,
much more on like the local level than the sort of the big national ones are when insane things happen, like you know, Boston Bomber and the Zodiac and stuff. Whereas a lot of it is small town, like sleepy countryside, someone goes missing or gets murdered, and they think they've got the wrong people, or they think they've it's like that sort of thing where someone like, well, I knew the people and they had an alibi, and they still got convicted, or this or that, and then it'll go from there, rather than it being like there's this big mystery of who's gonna find Madeleine McCann.
Oh, wow. So you think it's like in a lot of cases it's people who are like thrown into this through circumstance rather than like other people online searching for unsolved cases?
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of the stuff that I saw in terms of a few documentaries on British TV have that sort of vibe to it, where it's like it was my niece or my nephew or a member of my family was convicted of this thing, and it can't be, because, and it's never just like they would never kill someone. It's like there's this key piece of evidence that doesn't quite add up, and we want to, we're going to protest like outside the trial and do that kind of thing, rather than it being like you imagine. You don't know. I imagine them like like private eyes sitting in their office with like the paper up on the whiteboard and that sort of thing, but I don't think that's the actual reality of it. I think it's a lot of talking to media, a lot of like campaigning in order to free someone that they don't think is guilty.
Yeah, I don't think someone's like widow is actually sitting in like a messy room with tabloids and maps like scattered across the walls
string
and stuff.
like
Trying to find
together.
their lost husband and who did it or whatever. But it is kind of like what you say. It is more so like a protest where it's like there's clearly something amiss with this situation.
Yeah. The police didn't handle this case right.
Yeah, and I mean we've seen that loads in cases of like police shootings within the black community or something. Like it comes up so much that police just show negligence, and it just takes so many people online shouting and protesting to get them to step in.
Yeah.
I mean, you might have seen a recent case where a black dude got shot in America while out jogging, and it's only because this is all coming out in the last couple of days or weeks, and it's just because of like massive online pressure that this has been looked at. So that kind of like online pressure and crowdsourcing videos and things like that is really good. And there are big organizations that do that kind of like open source investigation stuff, but that's not really what we're talking about today. We're talking more about the small timers. So I mean, one case which I think is really interesting that blew up on social media and had 1 million people looking into it is the case of the Hart family. And I know about this from this podcast called Broken Hearts, which go through the whole story. Amazing podcast. But basically, this family, it was like a lesbian couple, a white lesbian couple who adopted like 7 or something black kids. And they had this amazing public image, like they were at Bernie Sanders rallies and stuff. They were all over Facebook, like these posts like, having these children has taught me so much about like race and like about like, the soul, blah, blah, blah. And they had this really perfect public image of like the kids were playing guitar and all that sort of stuff. But at one point, one of the 2 mothers just drove them all off a cliff to their death, like the whole family.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and it turned out that these kids were actually horribly abused and malnourished and all this sort of stuff. And after this happened, 1 million Facebook groups like came up with all these people joining, just discussing ideas, and basically all of those Facebook posts, she was incredibly prolific on social media, were there. So it was just people just going through every single thing, looking at the background of pictures, judging, trying to guess the weight of the children as it progressed and things like that, and just trying slowly unwrapping this double life. And I love that. Like, I would be so down for like, I'm one of those people who would just get really addicted to just looking into it.
Yeah.
And And in that case, I think it's kind of, the police were probably doing something of the same, but I mean, the public as well, I think, has some kind of right to look into these things where something of such public interest happens.
I think it's like you said, it's a public interest, and it's also going back afterwards and being like, why? It's not like they're trying to solve a criminal case in the traditional sense. It's just saying like, what happened? We're trying to understand what happened to these people. Why did they?
Yeah, like we know what happened,
that?
But why? Yeah,
I guess it's a similar reason why like anything so gruesome like the Manson family, the like Jonestown massacre, where it's just like, how the fuck did that happen? Like, how?
What the fuck happened? Yeah. So yeah, I think there is a little bit of just trying to understand like how horrible things happen. George, what do you think about the kind of morbid curiosity element of it? Because we've been kind of representing it as all positive and people just trying to find the truth and stuff like that. But do you think there is an element of people just liking gory things?
Yeah, gory and also like really shocking. I think people really want to know that some celebrity or something was like truly evil on the inside, but nobody saw this whole time. And I think a lot of that thinking kind of breeds the media around it as well. Like a lot of the shows or a lot of like the documentaries and stuff will push towards the more shocking and crazy things, and then people watch that more, and it just kind of creates like a cycle where it goes on. And then at that point, it is kind of breaking away from the trying to find the truth of the whole situation.
Yeah. I think it is also like, oh sorry Don, but like it's one of those things I think that's on a deeper level as well, where it's like it's really hard to not look at like a car crash when you go past it. It's kind of like at that level, it just is something that for some reason draws our attention. Like whether it be evolutionary or whatever, it just is something that you can't help but pay attention to, because it is. I guess it's like a threat, isn't it? It's something that is, it's something that is very, very
I guess it's tied
bad.
into this great thing that kind of looms over everyone, but you don't exactly see it all the time, and then all of a sudden it's like there it is, and these cases kind of like bring that to the center of the attention in a way.
Yeah, I think it might be a good time to talk about the absolute classic case of the Boston bomber. It's tragic and hilariously Reddit. The whole
This
thing.
is what's so weird about the whole thing, is that it's so hard to talk in a way that's both like funny and not, and like treating it like the gravity it is. You know what I mean? Like with the Boston bomber, it's like it's so ridiculous that all of the people on Reddit thought that they could solve the case of someone who just like blown up a marathon. It's like, what the fuck? Like, was
everybody following it when it was being like discovered and released? I think.
I remember when it happened, but I wasn't looking at it.
Yeah, I mean, I remember checking Reddit like every day and seeing like you would see top post of Reddit with like 1 million upvotes will be a picture of some guy with a backpack with like a big red circle and like a few other pictures, and saying like this guy was at the scene of every bombing and he had this backpack. It's like everyone find out as much as you can, post pictures of him, and then the next day you'd have loads of pictures of this random dude who just happened to be wearing a backpack at the Boston Marathon.
Brown dudes as well.
So did they not solve it?
So no. So what happened was that the police or whoever the FBI who was investigating it had a suspect that they were looking at who turned out to be the correct person. They didn't want to release that person's name or anything like that.
Obviously.
Yeah, but Reddit, through its genius, found a random brown dude with a backpack and linked him to, it's him. Found out his identity, because, the one thing about an investigation done by, 1 million people at once is that you have a really high chance of finding them, because the manpower is just insane. A police force will have, tens of people at most doing something like that, and they've got 1 million people searching social media. So they found this guy, and then put his name everywhere. The dude got tons of harassment and death threats and all this sort of shit. And the police were like, whoa, we are literally forced our hand now to release the identity of our suspect. So it actually negatively affected a police investigation that could have had life or death consequences.
I think that's always the fucking case, right? There's never been I can't think of anything that where police have come out and said, you know what, guys, they did it. You know, thank
Give them a round
you.
of applause.
Thank
To
you,
Reddit.
Knight Rider 420, for finally releasing the guy's name.
Yeah.
It's the same with like the fucking papers as well. When they do you remember the Gatwick drone? When it was just some poor fucking guy with and his wife. Or
Oh my
partner,
god!
and
I
it was
totally
just like,
forgot about that.
this is the guy, and it's like he was just
Well,
like, no,
what
no, it
did
isn't.
people-
What are you talking about?
What did people think it was? Like something bigger?
They
So
thought the papers, like the tabloids, just released the pictures and the name of a guy, and they were like, "This fucking prick ruined Christmas," and it was just like, turned out it wasn't him. Like it was just some guy who lived in like Crawley.
This is this is probably why ultimately
I love it.
on one side of the argument it shouldn't happen, because it is almost like too many cooks in the kitchen, especially if those
Yeah.
cooks can't actually cook
Yeah,
and
Yeah.
haven't been trained to do so,
Yeah,
because you're going to end up in these situations where that guy who was accused of being the Boston bomber, like it or not to him, he's probably still seen as the Boston bomber to some fucking idiots out there, because his name was given that in the first place.
Could you
Yeah.
imagine being that guy? Could you imagine being at an event where something so horrific like that happened, and then
And people think it's you.
people think it's you because you were wearing a backpack and you appeared in a few pictures?
You
Like,
go for a job interview 12 years later, and your employer's like, "Oh, I'll Google this guy. See what's. Oh my God, Jesus!"
Yeah, like, was this man the Boston bomber?
Yeah, it's like he's gonna turn up to like a marathon in the future just for show, and like there's gonna be someone there who's like a bit off about him, not because he did it, but because Reddit told him
Yeah,
that they did.
Weren't you the guy who was accused of bombing a marathon before?
Yeah,
So, yeah, pretty. The thing about the whole Reddit thing was it was so Reddit, and like the way they were so smug about it was just so fucking Reddit, and it was absolutely
you, Reddit.
infuriating. Yeah, and I think like the Reddit like admins and like owners and stuff came out and were like, "That was fucking terrible. Like, please never do that again." But I mean,
let's
they will
swing it
definitely
back
not
and
learn.
let's say like, okay, like why did they do it? It's because they wanted to help, right? They thought they could be of assistance or help this this really noble cause, and I think that's something that is to be positively said about this whole thing, not just the Boston
Yeah.
bomber, but just in general. It's like people may be getting in the way, but at least it's coming from like a good place.
I don't know.
It's trying for
I
justice,
hate to
like-
say it, but I also think, I mean, going off the predecessor of Reddit was basically 4chan. I do also think part of it was for the memes.
Yeah.
Oh, I think.
Do you know what I mean?
I mean,
Like-
even me, I was just looking at the post, but it was pure entertainment when I was
Exactly,
interested in
yeah.
it. I was just refreshing the front page every day, checking all the updates, being like, "Oh my God, are they, what have they found now? What's the new information?" And so many people would be the same, I imagine.
It's like the entertainment of seeing all of these pieces kind of come together. I mean, to spin it into like something more lighthearted and not exactly a crime, but it's sort of like when Shia LaBeouf did the
He will not divide us.
He Will Not Divide Us thing, and he put that flag in the middle of the desert, and then people on 4chan like found the flag in the middle of nowhere because they all banded
Yeah.
together and
Like
found it.
geolocated this fucking.
Yeah, it's kind of like that, but like, I mean, obviously for something a bit more serious, but with that in mind, because it's more serious, they probably shouldn't really be dipping their fingers into it.
So where do you
Yeah.
think do you think that someone like the Reddit mods or someone like that needs to step in, more stringent security and shit like that?
Definitely, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, all these subreddits already have witch hunting rules anyway. I think
Yeah, true.
a lot of the mods were probably in on it as well. Like, they were probably super excited about Reddit doing some big thing for justice too, and they didn't
Yeah,
want
yeah.
to
It's
put a
easy to
stop
get
to
swept
it.
up. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure. Especially
definitely.
in the whole like 24-hour news cycle where it is just constant updates every. I was the same as you, George. Like hitting refresh every opportunity I could just in case.
Yeah. So I mean,
Leave it to the professionals, guys. Leave it to the professionals unless it's not something that involves mass murder. Just,
Yeah.
if it's a theft or someone like going missing in your little town, maybe, have a look into it, make some protests, blah, blah,
Oh
blah.
yeah,
Don't
if someone's
fucking,
like stolen some bread in your cul-de-sac, like go ahead. But
Yeah,
like
yeah.
if it is like someone has died, then maybe your internet forum shouldn't solve it.
Yeah, maybe just take a
it's
step back.
complicated. Because the police don't always know best, and they can be racist and they can fuck things up and all that sort of stuff. But then again, I mean, are you guys going to do any better? So
Yeah.
That's it. Like, no matter how like bad the police is or good the police is, they're still professionals who have a level of training and competence that is far above the average person, right? It's no matter what your views are on the police, that can't really be argued against. This isn't like fucking Poirot like working on it. This is the average person who doesn't have anywhere near the resources, training, or experience as
And
even a detective who's worked there for a year. It's like
yeah. And they're going to keep the anonymity of the person, and they're going to go through all the right, checks and bounds to make sure that shit doesn't go awry.
Unlike some kid who thinks they have like deductive reasoning because they watch Death Note or something. Like,
yeah. Did you guys stumble upon RBI, the Reddit Bureau of Investigation?
No.
What's that?
So it's a subreddit that you're not allowed to investigate or ask for help with crimes. It's usually stuff like, I found this photo in my granddad's locker after he died. Like, who is this woman? Or something like that. And then everyone will kind of like band together to help. So it's more it's investigations. Sorry,
go on. Yeah, no, like shit. Like, oh, what's this document I found? It's really old. What language is this? Where is it? Where's it from? Like, that sort of thing.
This is the kind of stuff that loads of people on the internet working together should do. I mean, have you guys heard of Bellingcat?
No.
So Bellingcat is it's kind of like a website / organization that does big open source investigations. So they'll be using like tons of different resources, geolocating, all this sort of shit to discover like they've done really important. Do you remember those guys who the Russian spies or whatever that poisoned someone in Salisbury? Okay, with like the whatever
did they get him?
Nerve agent. So they did. They found the people never got arrested or anything. They're back in Russia and into the safety of Russia. But they identified who they were. So these are like Russian MI6 equivalent agents, and it's very impressive that they literally ID'd them. Like,
but these guys are professionals, though, right?
They're professionals, but they're not police, and they rely on loads of people helping out. Like, you can volunteer your time with them to like help them with things.
But but that's the thing. They'll kind of like they'll direct you, I assume.
Exactly.
They'll tell you what to do. Like this. Like when I say professionals, it's not just like you have to be a policeman or a detective. It's like there are plenty of people who have experience in those fields. Even like people who are like ex criminals. Like people who used to be involved in crimes could be considered professionals, right? If a forger is now like consulting on some on modern forgeries, etc. It's like those are professionals who have experience, knowledge, etc. that your part-time barista does not have.
Yeah, I can imagine now more than ever as well, especially people who are kind of in that sector, like former cyber criminals and things like that, could probably be used a lot in those kind of situations, just because they probably have the actual expertise when a lot of people in those situations don't.
But what do you think? What do you think is the right form for it, though? Do you think that these sort of people should just like be employed by the police, or do you?
Yeah, I know that's where it gets difficult.
Yeah, because the more like random organizations and stuff that pop up, like obviously this is very, very very small. It's not actually dealing with like big crimes, like you said. But the more people feel empowered to do these investigations on serious things, the more kind of conflicting ideas and struggle.
I guess it's different from country to country, right? Because I don't know what the rules are here in sunny old England, but I know in America you had to, if you want to be like a private investigator, there's like a license you have to get. Correct me if I'm wrong. And
I think so.
And things like we've joked about citizen's arrest before between us all, where there is an element of where if you're just working within the law, why not? Kind of. It's apart from the sort of, like we said, unless it's a really, really serious thing. But yeah, I don't know what the relationship is between the police and like maybe private organizations that they can maybe contract in. I assume it's like anything else where they could potentially contract in someone in the same way you'd contract like an IT, firm or, freelancer. Maybe you could do the same for if these investigations are essentially like look at all these files. They're not going to be going around interviewing like potential suspects. They're going to be hunting down data and shit like that, I'm assuming.
Yeah,
Yeah.
although I imagine a lot of the Redditors and people online will be a lot more interested in doing big sensational stories that everyone's talking
Of
about that the
course.
police probably
Yeah.
aren't gonna,
No one
show
wants to do the
pictures
boring shit.
to random
Yeah.
people.
Yeah,
You don't want to be the guy in the special effects section of the credits. You want to be like one
No.
of the lead actors in it, you know?
Yeah, they're
So-
going to be like fucking, check out this cell tower record for this hour. Check out the thousands of like calls that were made in case this
Yeah.
number crops up or whatever.
It's like, oh, I thought I was going to the scene. It's like,
you
no,
mean I'm
you're
not? Yeah,
I'm not circling
you're not
pictures.
putting me up in the CSI shit. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
So, I mean, does anyone have any last thoughts on the old?
To scale it down to its most raw and I don't know, it's still kind of dark, to be honest, form of like vigilantism. Is that a word, vigilantism, or
yeah,
not?
yeah.
Okay. Those videos, a lot of them from the UK, of people finding like pedophiles.
Oh my god!
Oh
Yeah, those where it's just like I almost question why they do it, because it's like these, let's face it, kind of horrible people, like just trying to like catch a pedophile like in the act through like their own investigation.
It's like To Catch a Predator, isn't it?
Yeah, but like a lot more
Budget.
horrible and
Okay.
budget. It's like on a camera phone. And
Let's
just,
not
like,
go too far into this because I think this is a brilliant episode idea.
I think
Really?
there's a for like actual vigilantism. Like
Okay.
there's one to look
Pedo
at,
Hunters
like,
episode
yeah.
is what I'm advocating for her.
Oh my god! All right.
Wow.
Well, in that case, I won't go any further. But yeah, that's a form of it.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
another one that I think the police are largely against
Yeah.
happening, because I don't know if it ever gets anywhere. It's a bit
I think
like
we
a
could-
But
drama.
it's also the
Yeah,
really
we can
popular
draw it
thing
back.
that everybody is like drawn to because it's like super sensational and extremely
Yeah.
shocking. So
it's pretty funny.
I think there's a
Yeah.
big difference between the idea of the online sort of more researchy journalist based like investigation compared to like an actual field operation with a
like
camera
pretending
phone,
to be a 12-year-old online and
Yeah,
then meeting
yeah.
with
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Or
like
being
it's,
like,
it's,
yeah.
it's,
Or if
it's
you
no
like get into
feature
a
film.
forum. Oh, sorry, what
Yeah.
were you saying, Don?
Like, it's no feature film. Don't get me wrong. Like, it's definitely not like exciting or like should be glorified in any way. These are just like kind of weird, like gross people just pretending to be kids to like lure pedophiles out. And then when they find the pedophile, it's not like let's take them to the police or whatever. I guess as you would, it's like let's just film us like calling them a
Yeah.
nonce and like insulting them and shit.
And like,
and, like
squaring up to them.
yeah, and like fucking crushing them down to like like the worm that they are or whatever.
Yeah, like you are
like,
disgusting.
yeah, like that's the point in those videos. I don't think it's like, I don't know. I mean, I guess it is for justice in a way, but like it's a bit more of a
It's like the justice served. It's like the power
yeah.
justice.
Yeah.
The revenge porn sort of.
Yes, that's it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think there's a bit more of a like sadistic satisfaction that comes from watching something like that
Yeah.
instead of like that guy got what was coming to him.
Yeah, I guess it's whether it's in service of, criminal justice in terms of are the police going to get involved? Is this person going to go to prison because he's going to have a fair trial? Or is it this person deserves to get his kneecaps broke?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it like to some people. I mean, I guess it depends on how much more we want to go into it. If Kaylin wants to do an episode about it, but
No, I just mean in general because you can that's the kind of difference I'm trying to draw is that when you have like the amateur detectives who are maybe looking at things online, maybe like drawing together like protests and things like that from a very like almost like a journalist would, or anyone that's just sitting at a desk organizing shit, compared to you said, Don, like the person who's going to go out and be like, this person's fucking getting away with something they shouldn't be getting away with.
yeah. I guess their form of punishment would be much more different than the guy who's sitting at a desk trying to like going through every detail and every report, trying to gather like concrete evidence and trying to do things by the books. Like they're probably expecting prison time, but then these people want them to like be exposed to everyone and embarrassed and like whatever else.
Yeah, like the punishment is the action. The punishment is discovering them and telling
Yeah,
everyone.
exactly. Yeah, it's not like, oh yeah, you should just go to prison and whatnot. It's like, here you are, and we're going to show you to the world for what you are.
Yeah, and I suppose society in general has agreed that the fairest form of punishment is like a trial, and then like kind of a structured punishment where you're given prison. It's not just like fucking anything, like public humiliation, square up to you.
Yeah. Like all is good if you're a criminal. Like I guess we'll just fuck you up in every way possible.
Like, all completely ruin your life indiscriminately.
Yeah.
So yeah, on that note, does anyone have any final thoughts on the true crime online detective world?
No, I think we covered it pretty well.
No, I think we covered it. I think the only thing I'll say is like, it's fine if the crime is not serious, like investigate it to your heart's content. But if it's something that is a matter of life and death for people, don't get involved. If someone is going to like lose their entire life to prison, or in say in America, like potentially get the death penalty, like fucking leave it to the professionals,
Or at least be sure and don't jump off of a red circle that you saw on Reddit.
Yeah. What we can do is that the podcast is going to be starting up our own task force to identify everyone who is in the V-Day Congo line, and we're going to identify all those people and put them to death. Yeah.
We're going to be crowdsourcing that, so everyone we'll email you, all our listeners, with one picture of someone in the Congo line, and it's your job to find out who they are. So
please email in.
We forgot. We got a shout out.
Oh,
we got to do a shout out this week. Gawahe, who is, I probably pronounced your name probably, so sorry, Gawahe. Sorry. Who is someone that I know has emailed us saying that they love our podcast. So shout out to you.
How do you not know how to pronounce their name?
It's a difficult name. It's like Gawahe. I don't know. It's my girlfriend's sister.
Yeah, but has she never told you the name?
I've never. She said the name. It's a difficult name.
You should be careful because now the true crime detectives, if they need to know who you are, they could track you down.
They could track me down.
Yeah.
They'd be pretty obscure though.
They're gonna find you through Gawahe.
Yeah. So shout out to you. Thank you for emailing. Thank you for listening, and thank you for being the only one who listens to this podcast. On that note,
this
Don,
is all for you.
Do you want to hit us? Yeah, we do it for you. Do you want to hit us with your social media?
Well, not my social media personally, but I hit you with the podcast's social media. Find us on Twitter at HeatLampPodcast and email us at heatlamppodcast at gmail.com. Funny enough, we actually got some weird attention after our last episode from mediums and psychics on Twitter.
Yeah, it's odd.
But we're still trying to figure out whether or not they're real people.
Or if they're from beyond.
It's hard to tell in this day and age who is a real and who is AI.
Yeah. I don't mean they were ghosts. Like, that's not what I was getting at. But, like, whether or not they were...
weren't sure if they're ghosts.
That's what I thought David was hinting at. It's like, they're from the world beyond.
I was
like,
joking.
No, we don't know whether or not we were just bots sharing out psychic medium content.
They were definitely bots.
Polly Wirham. Shout out to Polly Wirham from at Psychic Reviews for retweeting us.
Yeah, and for giving us some nice comments. Yeah. Thank you, Polly. I hope you listened to this
actually,
episode.
3 hours ago, she retweeted a comment from someone called, "Come at me, Scrub Lord, I'm ripped."
What did the comment say?
The comment said, "Came into new town and townsfolk are complaining that it's getting boring. I don't know. Call me psychic, but I have a feeling something exciting will happen soon, y'all." So I think she's just retweeting everything that says the word psychic.
Yeah.
She's got some weird bot or something that's doing that for some fucking reason.
Because she is a bot. She's not real.
Impressive. I know, but no, they comment on stuff though, but
generic comments. Like,
I guess so.
For example, she just retweeted something that said, "Coping with anxiety of change," like an article. She said, "Great postings, appreciated."
What was the comment she made about the podcast?
Just like, "Thanks a lot. I like this."
Yeah.
So I don't know. So Polly, if you're listening, I mean, if that episode was enough to get you into the podcast, I hope you're still here, and please keep retweeting us. Oh, dude, should we just put psychic in everything we write on Twitter so Polly retweets it?
I'll put it in the description of the tweet next time. Yeah. In a follow-up to our
cool.
psychic episode.
Yeah. All right, so that's it for us this week.
Yep.
Hope everyone's staying safe and having fun. And we love you all. Bye.
See you later.
Bye.